Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started here in just a few moments. We're just waiting for the waiting room to come on in. Please go ahead and start using that chat feature and let us know where you're calling in from and when you graduated from UIC. And if that is Chicago, please let us know which neighborhood in Chicago. We always like to see that. Thanks again for joining us this evening. Just give us a few seconds here while we get everybody out of the waiting room and joining us for this great discussion. Oh, hello to Julio. And we see somebody from the West Loop. Thanks for telling us where you're calling in from. Nashville, Tennessee. Somebody from Public Health, class of 91. Thank you for telling us when you graduated from UIC too. We always love to see that. Lakeview, more recent graduate, wonderful. Thanks again for joining us. Go ahead and use that chat feature. Let us know where you're calling in from, if that's Chicago, which neighborhood, and when you graduated from UIC, and we will go ahead and get started here. So welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Karen Corman, and I have the privilege of being the Executive Director of the UIC Alumni Association. Welcome to the UIC Alumni Exchange Series. We are hosting weekly events that bring you news, knowledge, and entertainment to help you explore, connect, and even escape from the everyday with a community of UIC alumni, faculty, and staff experts. You'll hear me say this just a few times today, but I encourage you to visit go.uic.edu/alumni exchange for the latest and greatest programming. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. As I'm sure you noticed, all participants are muted, but we encourage you to keep those cameras on. We recommend that you stay in speaker view, which you can select in the upper right-hand corner of Zoom. We always love seeing faces, so please do keep those speakers on. If you have questions throughout, please put as many of them in the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can throughout the presentation. Please do be aware that this is being recorded and will be available in approximately 10 days afterwards at the UIC Alumni Exchange website. The slides will be made available and online within the next day or two, but the recording will be available in about 10 days. And also, while we have taken precautions to prevent intruders, please know that if our session is unexpectedly and inappropriately interrupted, we will immediately end the session and will send an email with additional information. And finally, you will receive a 30-second survey after the presentation. Please do let us know your thoughts as it helps us plan for future programming. And with that, I'm excited to start our UIC Alumni Exchange program this evening by welcoming three-time alumnus, Dr. Benjamin Ritter, who will lead us into a discussion about finding your career sweet spot and help you discover what you should do next in your career and how to create a career that you love, even in these challenging times. Thank you, Ben, for being with us this evening, and I'll turn it over to you to begin the discussion.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me and welcoming me, and thank you to everyone that is here. I do also love seeing faces, so please keep your video on. Send your comments and questions in the chat. We are watching them and we'll respond to them. This event is for you, so please make it for you. We're gonna start with a quick poll. So if we can launch that up, I just kind of want to know where everyone is in their career journey. Just one question. So are you looking for a new job? Are you trying to improve your current job? Looking to launch a business or ready to retire? So far, almost an even split between looking for a new job and trying to improve your current job, and a couple looking to launch a business. Too ready to retire? I'll join up with you. Okay, thank you so much. This helps me a lot in just how I speak to finding your career sweet spot. So let's move forward. Okay, so there is a ton going on in the world right now. I mean, the pandemic, quarantine, working from home, maybe not working right now, a lot of political stuff, civil rights movement. There's so many extra distractions and extra things to focus on and priorities that you have in your life. I am just so glad again that you've made it to this event. I mean, there are so many events as well, but I'd like to just ask all of you for this next hour or so, for probably a little less now, if we could push all that to the side and just focus. Because again, this workshop is for you. It's about figuring out where your sweet spot is for your career. And so please, turn your phone upside down, turn it off, put your priorities for later, on the back burner, and let's just let go of some of that stress. Take a deep breath in, breathe out, and set the intention that we're going to focus on you tonight. Thank you everyone for doing that. Thank you for committing to this workshop. And a little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Benjamin Ritter. Have been coaching for about 10 years. I have a background in organizational leadership, and a lot of my research has been focused on value congruence and job satisfaction and motivation at work. I'm an author. I'm a nationwide speaker, global now because of the virtual environment, podcaster, author, and also just general entrepreneur. I'm always looking for business to start, and have started some in the past as well. But I didn't always want to be a leadership coach, guiding others to create a career they love. When I was really young, I wanted to be an astronaut and an archaeologist. And if you look at old Halloween costumes, supposedly a cowboy. But then through my more professional life, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I wanted to be a public health advocate. I wanted to be a lobbyist. I actually ended up working in healthcare for 7 years. I ended up as a healthcare executive for 3 of those years. And then I found really what I wanted to do. I chose what I wanted to do, and that was help others develop and help guide them towards a career that they could love. But it just wasn't always like that. I didn't know that this is where I was going to be, and I still don't know where I'm going to go. So I'd like to have a little bit of fun, and let's all just say hi to each other. So if you could introduce yourself in the chat by saying, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Now I'm going to be paying attention to these, so my eyes are going to look a little bit to the left. What was it that you wanted to be when you were young? And really curious, is anyone doing what they wanted to be as a kid now? Feel free to add that on. Scientist, astronaut, Dallas Cowboy, cheerleader, very cool. Wonder how that is now, right? Where people are playing in bubbles. Sports psychologist, jazz musician, senator, chef, teacher, veterinarian, pilot, lawyer. Very cool. Patrice wanted to be an attorney and currently an attorney. A nurse. It's interesting to think about the fact that we wanted to be something when we were younger, but a lot of times aren't that profession now. Very cool if you are, very, very cool. But I wonder why that is, why we have wants when we're younger and we have no limitations and don't have any expectations of what a real job is. But then now when we're trying to choose what's next, we ask ourselves, what should we do? Or what must we do, right? Because of peer pressure, social pressure, the own pressure that we put on ourselves. So I'd like to, at least for this workshop, try to reframe that and say, what do we want to do? What do we truly desire to do? And I'm going to provide a framework for that to help us all come to some answers and some conclusions. Well, let's get back to that mentality of what it was like when we were wondering what we wanted to do when we were a kid. We're going to touch on that mindset. We're going to really just focus on what do we believe about our careers. I'm going to provide that framework, that career sweet spot, figure out how to have a more fulfilling professional life. Answer some questions at the end. I'll even answer some questions during the workshop, so feel free to put them in the chat. But I always like to set the intention for everything that I do, to try to learn at least one thing new, to try to share at least one thing that's new. I see some people sharing already in the chat box, thank you. And to connect with someone new. If someone says something that resonates with you, send them a private message, connect with them in the chat. These workshops are not just for you to learn about yourself, but they're also for you to connect with others. It's a great opportunity. You're all interested in the same thing. So our career mindset, I'd love for everyone to share in the chat as I talk a little bit about this. What's something that you were told or that you believe regarding your career? For me, one of the number one mindsets that influenced how I treated myself professionally and how I acted was that my work had to be meaningful, and that I had to find meaning or get meaning. And that impacted me at work on a daily basis, where I'd go in and not feel like my work was meaningful, not feel like my leadership was making my work meaningful, or that my organization wasn't meaningful enough. And so I became more resentful towards my employer. I pulled back from relationships. I felt like my work wasn't for me. In actuality, when I reflected back on that, I realized that I was basically digging my own hole. They're not supposed to give me meaning. Meaning is an emotion, and that I'm supposed to create meaning on a daily basis. And that's within my control, because the only person that can create an emotion is you. And so that really started causing me to do a little bit more research on where that comes from and what I feel is meaningful, what I feel is my purpose at work. And then at the same time, what does balance look like? Because a large part of my professional career was focused on creating that meaning and living true to this purpose, but then not achieving it, not being successful in it. So then letting my confidence be affected by that, investing more heavily in it, so distancing myself from social relationships. So my career mindset in the past was really steering me down a negative spiral. And so today I'd really challenge yourself, if you're thinking that your work isn't exactly where you want to be, how can you make it a little bit more of a place that you want to be? And if you're really just driving for that next position or that next title, ask yourself, do I have the right balance in my life? Am I chasing something instead of living in the present right now? So I'd love for everyone to do another reframe and believe that your career is not a race. You're not trying to get anywhere, that it's an opportunity. So that every single moment right now is building skills within you, is teaching you more about yourself. You're building relationships that can support you. And very often, if we treat it as a race, we don't invest in those relationships. We don't focus on solidifying and building strengths and skills. We don't get the most out of our job. We don't craft it in a way that can actually help us in the long run. Because our career is called a career, it's not called a job. And remember that we have jobs. It's actually impossible to know what your career will be until it's over, because you're always going to have a different job or a different role that is going to continue to evolve. So let's try to wrap our minds around this, that a career is a combination of multiple milestones where we're learning, we're trying to create meaning for ourselves, and really taking more accountability for our own professional growth. So what is the career sweet spot? I'd say that mostly everyone on this call has probably picked a job they thought they should have, or that they must do, or maybe made a job choice where they didn't have full control over it. I mean, I was in that position before I launched LFY Consulting. I was searching for a job in the 2010 recession, and for 2.5 years had job contracts that were given to me that I signed on a dotted line, pulled away at the last minute. And so most of my career is actually me reacting to opportunities instead of choosing what I want and going after that opportunity. Choosing the organizations that I want to work for and going and building relationships with people that work there. Figuring out the skills and strengths that I need to get to the next position that I want, and then really dedicating my time to learn those different skills, to level up, and then to also ensure that people believe that I have those skills. And so can we stop reacting to the choices that present themselves to us and dedicate basically the next 6 months to a year, the next job opportunity that you want to create, and dedicate yourself to actually achieving that? We're going to talk a little bit more about how to do that. But ultimately, I'd love for everyone to do their research. What is it that you truly care about? Where do you really want to work? Who in your network potentially could work there and support you? What skills do you need? What are even the career tracks to get to certain places? Because it is a path, it is a journey. Every CEO was not a CEO at some point. They were an entry-level position before. And please remember that your career sweet spot, what we're going to talk about next, is a moving target. What's right for you right now might not be right for you in a week, might not be right for you in a month. And so we should always be reevaluating where we want to end up in our professional life, or what might be best for us next. And if we accept that mentality, there's a strong chance that we can actually be more positive, be more optimistic, and make the most of our opportunities through our career. So let's start our research. So I'd hope everyone has something to write on, pen or paper, a Word document open on their computer potentially, because I'd love for you to write some of these down that we're going to go over. I'm also going to be sending a worksheet in the follow-up email that goes over each of the categories of the career sweet spot to help you organize your thoughts and do this on your own as well. So if you don't have something to write, it's okay. But if you do, why not take this time, this focused time? So the first area of the career sweet spot that I want to discuss is what you've been trained to do. And if you want to share in the chat some of the things that are your strengths, I'd love to see some of them. But think about your schooling. What degree did you get? What classes did you take? What skills have you learned over the years from specific jobs, from self-learning? What are just your strengths? Like, what would people, if you ask them what you are great at, what would they say? What about past work experiences, past jobs that you had? So the first part of the career sweet spot really encompasses what you are good at, what you've been trained to do. These are things that you're confident at. It might not be things that you truly like. Like I developed a really great knack for data analysis, and I really don't like it. Like, I really dislike SPSS, doing pivot tables in Excel, but it's something I'm really good at, analyzing data and coming up with conclusions from it. But it is a skill, so I put that down. I have a background in entrepreneurial management, launched a couple of different businesses, service-based and product-based. I have a degree in health policy administration. I have an MPH as well, and worked in health policy for a bit. I became really passionate about food nutrition, so I self-taught myself everything I could learn about the body and about food. So that's a strength. I was really passionate about learning how to sell, so I studied a ton of different books and videos as much as I could. And when I was younger, this is kind of silly, I was a dog walker. So I'm probably pretty good at walking dogs. I also was a bartender for a while, so I'm probably good at having meaningless conversations and meaningful. These all make up what your strengths are, what your skills are, and what you are confident at. So thank you to everyone that's been sharing. So the next area of the career sweet spot is what you love to do at work. So think about what energizes you on a daily basis. Think about what you feel successful about. Think about what makes you feel proud. Think about when you're done with the workday, when you go home and you just feel really good about that day. What was it that you were doing? Who was that who were you interacting with? Where were you working? Were you working at home? I know right now probably we're all working at home. But in the past, maybe were you working in the office, working in a co-working space, working at your desk, working in a meeting room? And what skills were you using during that time? And feel free to share this in the chat as well. For myself, I really love facilitation. I love workshops. I love actually having conversations. So if anyone wants to reach out to me and have a conversation after this about what they've learned or any questions they have, feel free. Super active on LinkedIn. I really enjoy being artsy. So I love creating like marketing documents or presentations like this one, flyers. I like making things look pretty, like organizing things. And I actually really like meetings that are straight to the point and have a specific outcome. I recently was working with a client and they really disliked working with one specific department and specific people. And if you dug down, peeled the layers back on that, you found out that there were certain personalities that she didn't like working with, certain ways of handling projects she didn't like working with. And those meetings were incredibly exhausting for her. So if you're having a tough time figuring out what you love, you can look at what you dislike and then just flip that. And that might give you some more information as well. I see in the chat, we have solving technical problems and collaborating with other teams to reach resolutions, offering solutions to others, helping students to identify and achieve their goals. And what I really enjoy about these areas is that they're different for everybody. I mean, if I talk to someone that is really interested in like human development and professional development, they might say having coaching conversations, helping people solve problems, helping people get unstuck. Or other people that I know, I recently had a client that I worked with that really dislikes having coaching conversations. She really does not like helping mold people and helping them grow, much more autonomous, much more likes to be given work and projects and solve them on her own. I see helping others, advocating, communicating, holistic medicine, editing, writing. And a lot of times what you love to do might actually intersect with what you are good at. Sometimes it won't, sometimes it will. Because, I mean, another client really loves to bake and didn't like a lot of other stuff that she was doing. But there were different aspects to baking that might be relevant to her job. Is it making something from scratch and having an outcome? Is it feeling like you actually had like a real impact in what you were creating? Is it time to herself? So ask yourself those questions. Now, this next part is actually in the same section of the career sweet spot, but it's what you love to do in life. And a lot of people may think about this as their values or their passions, or their purpose. It's also what energizes you. It's what motivates you. I'd say this is what you would get up for at 5 a.m. for. It's potentially what you would get up for on the weekend to do. It could be something that you do in the middle of the night. It's something that you can talk for hours about or would read about for hours. Maybe watch a YouTube video about. So reflect on where you've felt that you've had purpose or that where you've made an impact. Or reflect on where you want to have impact, some causes that you truly care about. When I mentioned that I was interested in public health policy, I became really passionate about dismantling corruption in the food industry. I did my capstone on abolishing sugar subsidies. And that actually stemmed from the fact that my mom got really sick. And you know, that still is a motivator for me. Why I help develop other people to be their own leaders is because I want people to make their own choices and not be basically held a victim to people trying to sell a product or something like that. And so your passion might actually not have a direct implication, but have like an underlying implication to what you're doing. And I even think that I'm still on that path to have some role in public health. If you can't think of any times, like anything that you actually feel like you've actually had an impact or a purpose, I ask you to reflect on where you've been happiest in your life and think about maybe the top 3 to 5 memories that you've had where you were the happiest. A lot of times those memories hint at themes, they hint at your values, which actually relate to what you love to do in life. Like, for example, a lot of people will say, I love to travel. Well, how do you like to travel? Do you like traveling with someone? Do you like traveling by yourself? Do you like traveling internationally? Do you like traveling locally? What do you gain from traveling? Can you dissect that a little bit? Is it the adventure? Is it novelty? Do you like going to the same places? I would love if you guys can use one word to describe what you love to do in life, a purpose or impact, and put that in the chat. I'd love to hear what's energizing and motivating people on this call who create and solve. I got some shivers. Narrating. I have a few more. Dancing and learning. I love that. Move, travel. For me, some of my top values are health, openness, justice. And you see how those relate to what I mentioned about public health. Listening to stories, active listening and understanding where someone is coming from. It sounds like connecting in a way. Learning. I'm totally a lifelong learner. I have way too many letters after my name. I make a joke that I'm trying to spell the alphabet. One day I'll get there. Adventures. Beautiful. Thank you everyone for sharing that. So the final area of the career sweet spot is what you want to learn and where you feel challenged. And very often this area is forgotten about. This is so important to help you feel like you're growing, to help you feel like you're not stuck in the same place. I struggle with this a lot because I crave novelty and I'm achievement oriented, which means that I like to continuously accomplish things. And so this little area for me matters a lot. I've actually had to struggle with finding novelty in things that are the same to ensure that I stay consistent and accomplish the things I want to accomplish. So try to identify experiences that you want to have in the future. From the people you'd like to meet, to the skills you'd like to build, to the projects you'd like to work on, to the impact that you might want to have. About 5-ish months ago, well, I took on the new opportunity then, so I'd say probably about 8 or 9 months ago, I felt like I wasn't being challenged anymore in my coaching practice. And I know that this is such an important area of the career sweet spot that I was able to say, it's not that I don't like coaching anymore, it's that I need to feel like that I'm learning, that I'm being challenged. And it wasn't learning new skills anymore. It wasn't like studying books or watching videos. I ended up finding out that I wanted to network with different types of people, with executives, people that were on a different caliber. And I wanted to apply different skills other than just coaching, conversations and sales and prospecting and things like that, and workshops. And so I ended up finding some really neat opportunities because I made that realization. I was aware of that. And if anyone has something that they want to learn in the next year or so, or someone they want to meet, I'd love to hear about that in the chat as well. I think what's great about all of you sharing is that other people also get to read what you're writing. It might give them ideas, or they may resonate with what you're saying and reach out to you and build a connection. Or maybe they know the person that you want to reach out to, or maybe they have that skill or have a network in that area. So use this chat as a way to connect with each other as well. I also know that in the future, I do want to be involved in public health more. And so this is part of my career sweet spot, that idea of public health advocacy. And so that orients and it creates an intention for myself each and every day with the people I connect with, how I mold my work on a daily basis, the opportunities I say yes to. So even if this is something that you want to do, it can truly impact what you're currently doing. So now that we've gone over these 3 different areas, you kind of see how they might intersect. What you want to learn and where you feel challenged, what you've been trained to do, and what you love to do at work and in life. Where those intersect, that's where you should be right now. You can make that happen for you. That's where you will feel fulfilled. That's your career sweet spot. And I'd actually ask all of you to plot your current job right now. Your current job, or maybe a previous job if you're not working right now and looking for a position. Where does it fall in this career sweet spot? And share that in the comments. Does it fall in between 2 of them? Does it fall in 1 of them? Does it fall in the bullseye? And what's really interesting, if I reflect on some of my positions in the past, like when I was working in healthcare, I was in a place that I felt like I was trained. I didn't really realize the meaning, and I wasn't really challenged. And so I was confident, but I felt stuck, and I didn't feel like I was really making an impact. I felt underutilized. Now, in instances where maybe you feel challenged all the time, but you don't have either area, you will feel underconfident, so you'll be under stress. You won't feel good at what you're doing, and you won't feel that it's meaningful, so you actually probably won't be very productive because you won't understand the purpose behind it. Now, if you're doing something that you love and it really matters to you, then you'll probably be really engaged and motivated and passionate. But if it's not something you've been trained to do, you'll go through some time until you learn actually how to do that job. You'll go through a time where you're doubting yourself, where your inner critic is really loud and saying, you're a failure. And because you're like, I love this, this is supposed to be for me, but you won't feel good at it. And if you're not feeling challenged, you might actually start questioning your passion and your purpose and the meaning. You'll be like, do I really not know what I'm supposed to be doing right now? Did I make the wrong choice? Now, let's say you are in a place where you feel like you're being challenged, in a place where you're learning on a daily basis and you're passionate about what you're doing, but you don't feel good at it. That lack of confidence, again, will truly impact you. So if you're in a position like that, use this diagram to make some choices. If you don't feel confident in something, then can you take a class? Can you get your employer to fund something for you? Can you take your own class? There's a ton of deals right now. Can you take a workshop like this one? Can you get some books? Can you listen to some podcasts? Can you be intentional about building confidence? Can you also maybe reflect on your past successes? And because maybe you're just not really aware of your strengths, you're working too hard. So sit back and really kind of make a success folder of things that you've accomplished in life, and even ask coworkers and maybe previous bosses about where you've succeeded, because that can really help build some confidence as well. Kind of disassociates yourself from your inner critic and you can see yourself from an outside perspective. If you're in a place where you don't feel challenged, that's a great opportunity for you to plot out what you want to learn, the people you want to meet, and then actually bring that to your manager or to your boss, or to start talking to coworkers about how to incorporate yourself into the new work. And if you're in a place where you actually feel that it's right for you, but you don't feel like you're challenged or you're good at what you do, I highly recommend that you don't doubt yourself, that you spend some time focusing on building those strengths, on finding ways to feel challenged. And I already mentioned a little bit about what to do when you're in a place where you don't feel that it's meaningful. But I'd like to just quickly remind everyone that meaning is an emotion. It's based on our perception. And try to reframe how you view your work. Let go of resentment, let go of judgment. Try to find the greater impact that your role is having, the organization is playing. Try to see potentially what this job means for your future. And try to remind yourself through affirmations, maybe on a daily basis, or reminders in your phone, about why your work is meaningful. You'll find that you will have more motivation, more energy. So I'd love to ask everybody, put all this together. What could potentially be next for you? What can you do at your current job? Is there another job that you're now thinking about going for, another organization that you want to reach out to? Is there someone that you want to connect with? I know everyone's been sharing in the chat box so far. I can't wait to read those a little bit later, but I'd love for everyone to share what could potentially be next. Did anyone gain some clarity right now? Does anyone have a potential next step for themselves? Remember, I'm also going to be sending the worksheet regarding the sweet spot. So you'll be able to actually do this for yourself as well again, because this is a moving target.
And if I may interrupt, there was not really a question, but a comment. Somebody made the comment that they've always worked hard and now they feel burnt out with their current career. So I wonder if you have any advice around that comment.
I was you. Sometimes I am still that person that works too hard, but luckily I have built some kind of alarm bells in my mind that understand what it feels like to be burnt out. What it feels like to really just not have energy to do the simplest tasks. Almost wanting to just asking yourself, what's the purpose of this again? And so I would really first recommend that you just take a break for a little bit, to honor the fact that you're exhausted, to honor the fact that you feel burnt out, to surround yourself with things that fill you up, the things that you love. And then to really ask yourself, when did you start feeling burnt out? What are the things that you feel drain you? And how can you start saying no to some of those things? How can you start building boundaries to ensure that you're constantly energized? And you can also think back at times where you were really motivated and really energized. What was going on then? Can you integrate some of that back into your life? But what you just did by asking that question, by saying that I'm burnt out, by saying that I'm exhausted, that is literally the first step. It's acknowledging that something is going on that is draining you. But the next step is you have to give yourself permission to take a break. You have to give yourself permission to honor who you actually are or want to be and the life that you're not living because you're burnt out. Right? You're not, in some way, shape, or form, you're not honoring yourself. So what are you valuing right now? What are you saying is most important? And what has kind of lost your attention? What has lost your focus? That would just be my initial response.
Great, thank you. Do you want some additional questions, or would you prefer to hold?
Sure. So let's take some questions right now on this part, and then I have a little bit of a bonus section if we have more time.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing, by the way, about if you're feeling burnt out. A lot of times, if you're burnt out, you've distanced yourself from social relationships and people that could support you, not just in your career, but your personal life. So please, please, please take a step back and ask yourself, what relationships can you start investing in a little bit? Because bringing people closer to you, having that support system will keep you motivated, will keep you energized. And when you're really not allowing yourself to have the boundaries you need, they'll sometimes kind of knock you upside the head a little bit and say, come on, let's hang out. Let's honor ourselves a little bit.
I think that's great advice. Okay, so another question. The person says, I am unsure of what is meaningful and matters the most to me. Do you have some ideas to find that thing?
Mm-hmm. I'd love to recommend a book that made an impact on me. Well, two books, actually. I think one's in the book club right now, which is Design Your Life.
Mm-hmm, it is.
And the other one was So Good They Can't Ignore You, which is by Cal Newport, I believe. And my initial desire in terms of how to respond to this was to give you an exercise to find out what matters to you. But I need to preface this with a disclaimer that what matters to you may change over time. And to always remember what matters to you should always take second to you. And I think that this also kind of leads to burnout if we, kind of leads to this burnout question that we just discussed. If you overinvest in what matters to you and don't have balance, and you think that it's everything you need to do with your life and everything you need to accomplish, you will burn out for sure. So just want to put that disclaimer out there that knowing what matters is not everything. Learning what matters to you, so much more important. And learning what matters to you takes experiences. It takes you going out there and saying yes to work that makes you uncomfortable. It takes you going out there and saying yes to work that makes you comfortable. But the more experiences you have, the more you will find out about yourself. And you might not actually have to go do that work. You can go talk to someone about it. You can listen to a podcast about it, watch a documentary about it, read someone's biography about it. But so go out there and have some new experiences. Now, if you just want to do an exercise, the one I recommended about exploring your past memories is really helpful. So if you list out your 5 happiest moments in your life, and also list out your 5 least happiest moments in your life and detail those out, not only will you know more about your journey and gain a little bit of confidence and from that reflection, but you can examine those memories for themes and similarities. And a lot of times the similarities and themes lead to your values, what you truly care about, where you're energized, where you're most fulfilled. And then you could ask yourself, well, what organizations exemplify these values? What type of work can I do that really incorporates these values and that drive the type of work that you want to do? This kind of relates to the culture of an organization or the person job value congruence that I kind of mentioned about my research in the past. So that's one thing you can do, one step that I'd recommend for sure. And if you want to take it a little bit further, you can actually list out the things that energize you at work and then ask yourself, well, how do these areas that energize us, kind of what we were doing with our strengths and skills and things you love to do, how do they relate to your values and how can you find where they intersect? Just going back to the career sweet spot again.
It's a really interesting approach to self-reflection and really trying to figure out where you'll be happiest. I saw some earlier comments about if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. And I think that's very true.
Yeah. And to that point, it always feels like work. I mean, you're going to like it more, but work is work. And I remember I go through moments in my life where I just go, man, this whole like operation of having to work for a living, who came up with that? But depending on how you perceive your work, the value that you feel from it, the relationships that you have from your work, how good you feel about it, and just the fact that you're growing and feeling like you're, challenging yourself, that can really counter that idea. It can really make you feel energized each and every day and make work a gift, because really we're spending so much of our time there. It should be a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question for you. The person asked, how do you distinguish between pandemic burnout and career burnout?
Well, I'll reflect on my own experiences. I thought that I'd be fine because I work from home anyways. But the disruption of my schedule and my routine had a pretty severe impact on me, especially the loss of real social interaction and relationships. And I had to take a step back and I had to re-examine my life, and I had to create interventions like sectioning off my work area with a new rug and a new desk, and using only a work cup when I was at work, and ensuring that I went for walks. I took myself for a walk on a day, 3 times a day, and saying no to video sometimes. So I could actually take some calls on walks, and I didn't feel like I had to stare at a screen for hours. And making sure that, my life had some sort of structure that had little breaks in it. Like my gym was in a certain area of my apartment. My work was in a certain area. My social time was in another area, and creating that routine again. With career burnout, I've experienced that as well. And that again causes you to stop and to reflect and say, what do I feel is draining me? And so I guess for a long answer to your question, making it a little bit shorter, it's to stop and ask yourself, when did this start? Did it start right when the pandemic occurred? Has this been going on for a while? Can you try some small interventions, like I just mentioned, to re-energize yourself? If those work, I think you have your answer. If they don't work, then you can try something else. So take some of the answers from the career sweet spot, try to craft your job a little bit. Take some of the answers from my story about the pandemic, and try to craft your life a little bit, and see where you are, where it works and where it doesn't work. I do say that a lot of times when I work with people that are in career burnout that realize that they need something new, it hasn't been going on just for 6 months. It's been going on for years. But the pandemic was an opportunity for them to be a little bit by themselves, like a little bit more, and to feel what they were feeling and not be stuck in just the work. And so ask yourself, where is this really stemming from? And you might get some answers, and hopefully that answered your question a little bit.
I think that's very smart. I know you have some bonus material, so I don't know if you want to turn to that and we can come back to more questions.
Yeah, so an extra little bonus assignment for you, because it's one thing to know maybe how to mold your job right now or mold your career right now, but sometimes you might not have like all the information that you need. You might not know like, well, what's later on? Like I understand maybe how to gain a little bit more fulfillment now in the sweet spot, but what's next? What's after this? And so I want to talk a little bit about future mapping. Future mapping is an exercise where you're basically envisioning what life might be like when you retire. So I'd ask everyone to stop for a moment and maybe close your eyes and take a deep breath to clear our minds from everything that we just went over. And envision that you are on your last day of work. Look around you. Where are you? Look at what's in your hand. What are you packing up? What is the type of work that you're doing? What's the last project that you were working on that you're closing off? What's the work that you're handing off to your coworkers? And pause for a moment and reflect on the past couple years. Who are you working for? What type of impact did you have on the world? What type of relationships did you build? What's your professional network like now? You have to go say bye to people. You're retiring. You have to tell them about this new transition. Who do you have to reach out to? If you have an answer, if it immediately popped up, share it in the chat. I'd love to know. Everyone can open your eyes. Now I would really suggest and would love everyone to do this exercise a couple times, and to come up with 3 to 5 different future endpoints. Remember I mentioned that your career is a journey. And if you're working towards your values, if you're working towards challenges and different skills and things that you love, that journey can end up in a lot of different places. Because what you're doing is not as important as how you feel about what you're doing or the impact that it's having. And so these futures may actually incorporate some parts of your career sweet spot. They may not. And it may be difficult to figure out where you might end up when you retire. You might feel like by picking one thing, you're missing out on something else, which is why you should pick 3 to 5. But when you have these end points, the next step that I would ask everyone to do, and yeah, please keep using the chat box. I see retired educator heading to build a homestead. Very cool. I hope to have a farm one day, by the way. And I'm not even farmsy, but I remember as a kid going to my cousin's farm overseas, and it was just something that I think I want one day for sure. Not sure how that relates to my professional goals right now, but I bet I can tie it in somehow. Alejandro has backyard chickens. Very cool. So after you have those 3 to 5 different endpoints, it's time to pick one of them. I'd love for you to do this for all of them, but then start actually breaking one of those futures down, like working backwards to today. And it really helps if you do this with a partner, 100%, because they aren't limited by your expectations, by the way that you think careers need to go. And the reason why we have multiple different endpoints, and now I want you to do this 3 different times for each endpoint, map out 3 different versions of how your future could be. The reason why this is so important, because there are so many different ways to get to the same endpoint. There are some similarities, but there are really many different ways. And I think people sometimes get caught up in again, like what they should do, what they have to do, what they must do, when really the question is, what do you want to do? Because eventually you can get to the same endpoint. I see a couple people sharing. Retire from helping patients have better research, health outcomes. I would love to retire and buy a Christmas tree farm. Very neat, very cool. I love that. And so map out, how can you make that possible? Who would you have to interact with? What types of positions do you need to have or might need to have? What type of experiences do you need to have? What sort of skills do you need to build? And like, for example, if I want to be a chief of people officer in the future, if I worked backwards from that, one version would be to be like a senior director and then a director. And let's say I wanted to work for an organization focused on public health policy and health professionals and leadership development. Well, then I'd have to ensure that those organizations were related and in that future. But a different version could be that I build my business in a certain way and build a partnership with one of these organizations that operates in this field, become good friends with the senior director or an EVP or the CEO, and actually have discussions with them about that transition into that role, what that might look like. And that's not very far-fetched at all. I've had actually offers and opportunities to join organizations in highly senior roles just based on my business. But you could also work for a completely different industry, end up getting in the same role, and based on your networking and relationships, or just how you pitch yourself, transition into that role as well. So try to map out 3 different versions to get to each one of your futures and share this with somebody. And I really hope that this exercise ends up showing you that there are so many different ways to get to a end point that you truly want, and to create a career that you can love and feel that is meaningful. And that it's okay if one of your goals doesn't work out, because there are so many paths that you could take to ultimately achieve what you want. And so how do we ensure that the paths that we're on are fulfilling themselves instead of chasing that happiness and chasing that fulfillment? Because we all deserve to have a career that we love. We all deserve to have work that we love. We all can make that happen. We all can craft our current jobs to be in that sweet spot. But a lot of times we don't feel empowered to, for whatever reason, burnout, limitations on ourselves, feeling like we don't have that responsibility, or we can't actually take action like that. So I challenge all of you, to do one thing tomorrow to take action towards your career sweet spot and your future map. Would anyone like to share what their future holds in the chat box, or any other questions? We can talk about next steps. I know we're almost at time.
So we encourage people to include questions. We were thinking, and Ben, I'm not at all trying to put you on the spot, because we didn't ask you to do this beforehand, but we're thinking when this conversation is over, if folks would like to stay on, we can pull down the PowerPoint and turn on microphones. And if people want to have an informal discussion, we would welcome folks to do that and share their thoughts and comments. But again, we didn't ask you ahead of time to stay on, so we know, Ben, we've only asked you to stay till 7, so certainly we can try and manage the best that we can. But we just see lots of chat going on, and it feels like it might be an opportunity to continue the conversation for some people, but by no means any pressure for you to stay on.
No, I'd love to. I'd love to stay on a little bit. And just a little extra for everyone, if you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I may take a day, but I will respond to any connections and questions or messages. And I also produce a ton of content, video content on YouTube, so feel free to subscribe and watch some of those videos on finding, the right career for you, or how to interview in a certain way, just overall life fulfillment. And I'm giving away a few things. So I'm giving away a free coaching session and a workbook, and you can enter that raffle at the link on the slides. And make sure to watch your inbox for the career sweet spot worksheet, which goes over basically the questions that we went over today, but it allows you to take some notes in a structured format.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Ben. Maybe I'll pause for just a second and just say thank you for sharing this presentation, and thank you for your continued willingness to talk with our alumni and friends. We very much appreciate it. Certainly, I've learned a lot and had some really good self-reflection during this, and I hope others have too. For those of you that do want to stay on and can join us, please do. We are going to give you the ability to turn off your microphones. And again, we can pull down the presentation modes.